New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Oh, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you this Saturday morning, and it could be anytime, anywhere, since this is available at all times, wherever you might be. So I'm really happy to greet you this morning, and I wanted to start off today with something that came from one of the Science of Mind magazines, and I thought it was just so beautiful and wonderful that I wanted to share it with you today. And one of the things that I practice in my life is practicing being in peace. And of course, for me, that is another name for God, is peace. So this is something called serenity, which falls under the category of peace. And it's a prayer. The harmony of my being is sustained because in God, there is no discord. God in me is not in conflict, and therefore there is nothing of strife or contention in my thought. This peace, which is God, is perfect understanding. Love and harmony keep me integrated in God. I am calm and serene. All is right with me and all is right around me. My thoughts and feelings are attuned to good, and everything I do is the expression of that which is good. Likewise, I look for and expect the good in other people to express. I live in a universe of harmony. For God, the center is peace. And isn't that a wonderful, wonderful prayer for a wonderful way to start the morning? And the lines that I really love in here is, I look for and expect the good in other people to express. Because so often, I have people who come to me who are having difficulties and conflicts, and even myself, I have difficulties and conflict with people. And sometimes, when you're in that place, it's very easy to forget to look for and expect the good to express in other people. In that conflict, it's like a film that goes over your vision, and you don't use your mind to expect to look for the good in it. So it's a good reminder. It's a wonderful reminder for all of us to look and expect to see that good express in anyone that we may be in conflict with at any moment. So I love that. And, just to know that we do live in a universe of harmony, even when it doesn't appear to be that way, we do live in a universe of harmony. This morning I've chosen to look at some of the back issues of the Science of Mind from different years. And one of the years is 1940. And the piece that I chose this morning from 1940 is by Raymond Charles Barker. And those of you who are familiar with religious science have probably heard the name Raymond Charles Barker. And he was an author and leader in the New Thought movement. And then he came into religious science at the invitation of Ernest Holmes. And, they had a very good relationship. And Ernest Holmes asked him to start start an institute in San Francisco, which he did, and he ran that for several years before Ernest Holmes said, "Why don't you go to New York City and start a place, where we disseminate these teachings and this thought?" So he went to New York City and established a place there in Manhattan. And soon it was overflowing with people, and they had to start meeting at Lincoln Center to give his talks. So he's written many, many books, and and been a great influence on the movement. And as an early leader. And some of his students were people like Louise Hay. And, and of course, Louise Hay went on to form a whole group dedicated to New Thought. And many people are familiar with Louise Hay. And of course, she did tremendous work during the AIDS epidemic. And she brought many, many people to this place of just unconditional love and acceptance during a very dark period of history in the U.S. around the AIDS epidemic. So this was one of Charles Raymond Barker's students, was Louise Hay. So he was very influential in the movement. And he has so many books. He has a book called Treat Yourself to Life, The Science of Successful Living, Power of Decision. And I love that title, Power of Decision. And that goes back to, just hearing that, that stirs me, knowing that, yes, we do have the power to decide. And 365 days of richer living, and those are daily inspirations. Treat yourself to life, what it is and how to do it. Money is God in action, and he wrote these at a time when, probably still people were thinking that, money's money and it might not be that great, might be the source of all evil, right? So money is God in action. How to be healthy, wealthy, and happy. You are invisible. Spiritual healing for today. Create the life you want. The science of successful living. So all of these books, I believe, are still available, and some of them have been re-released as soon as 2014. So those are definitely available. And this particular piece that I want to share with you this morning appeared in 1940 in the Science Mind magazine, and it's called The Divine Option. And what I love about our teachings are that they are, they're really down to earth. They're about how do we live day to day. It's not something that's really heady, and sometimes we get that idea. Sometimes when we're reading the Science of Mind textbook, it feels a little bit heady with the language that is used and some of the way the ideas are presented, and which were presented in kind of of the language of the time. What was considered, not colloquial, but a more higher order of language. So at times it can feel a little bit like, oh, you're ending up scratching your head and wondering, well, what was that about? Until you can trace where that idea comes from and how it fits into this 20th century iteration of something and synthesis of science and philosophy. So that was what Ernest Holmes was involved in, bringing those two things together in in a way that uh, made sense for the 20th century and for our time as well. We're still, nothing is finished, right? We're still involved in this process of creating. So in 1940, uh, Raymond Charles Barker wrote The Divine Option. It's very down to earth. The food you eat nourishes the body. The ideas you use nourish the mind. And the prayers you pray nourish the spirit indwelling in you. All these things are optional. We can eat whatever we desire. We can think whatever we choose. We can pray or not as we decide. The gift of free will is our spiritual birthright. And by our use and misuse of it, we are made or broken. And there's the idea of free will is introduced here, which of course follows choice. We have choice. Because we have choice, that means that yes, we have free will to live our lives as we live them. And we can make all these choices that are for our good, or through trial and error we may make choices that are not in our highest in the interest of our highest good. So I think that what we do as human beings is really glean wisdom from our elders as we're growing up. So we may bring some of that forward with us. But I think most of us also live by trial and error. What works for us, and what do we, what is our desire, and how do we go about achieving that desire? And how do we even know to choose desire? How, whether or not a desire will be good for us, right? We don't know that as we mature spiritually. We don't know that until we go through a process of trial and error. But we always have that power to choose, and to choose a different path when we move forward. So that is what he means by the use and misuse of free will is the way that we are made or broken. And, I think that's a little bit overstated. Uh, we may be a little bent in the process, but, we are never, we always have that wholeness at our center that we can go back to and recover. And the second paragraph of this is we may or may not fully realize that that a great responsibility always rests upon our shoulders. That responsibility is our freedom to think anything we really want to think. If you do not like your present mental habits of worry, fear, and discord, then change them. And change them quickly before they create even more damage. Your future is being created today by your mental habits. Develop these habits according to the pattern you would like. Begin to think only in terms of what is good, abundant, happy, healthy, and harmonious. And I think this is particularly apt today. One of the ways that the time that we're living in right now, I've seen it characterized as the age of anxiety. And it's kind of come to the fore that even very young children are living with a lot of anxiety in their life. And this is kind of a new development at this particular point. And, of course, there has been anxiety for children probably since time immemorial, but here we are at a time when we have so much more materiality that is provided a good life for people, and yet we have more anxiety showing up in children as a pathology. So this is very, very important for us, and it's important to remember when we work with our children to reassure them that they are empowered beings. They may be small, but they're mighty, that they have that ability to change their thinking and get rid of that worry, fear, and discord from their lives. And, I think that, this is something that is applicable to everyone's life, uh, to remember this, that this is our responsibility, right? Uh, we can go to people for help, of course. And that is part of our responsibility to reach out when we are experiencing something that is causing us to worry, to be fearful, or to have anxiety, or to have discord in our life. One of the most healthy things we can do is reach out for help and go to someone, talk to them. In our tradition, we have practitioners that we can go to and we can pray with, or going to our ministers and talking with them and praying with them, doing a spiritual mind treatment to change our thoughts about our particular circumstances. That's our responsibility. And it's a powerful thing to have responsibility. It really is. It's kind of one of those words that we run away from sometimes. Ooh, that's the big R, right? I don't want to be responsible for that. Good Lord, no. But it's something that is actually empowering to us. It's wonderful to have that ability to be responsible for our own lives. And remember, there are, there have been times in our lives when it's been more difficult to see how we can change our circumstances. And yet this is a real gift to know that we have that responsibility. It's not just on us alone. God has our back always. We have support, but we have the responsibility to wield all those things and use that good that is ours. Now, I just want to give an example of this. And I was at the market last night, and I love going to my little market. It's at the corner, and it's just a supermarket, one of the chains, and I've been going there for 20 years, and I know a lot of the people who work there. And there's one person in particular that I always love seeing, because to me he embodies spirituality, at the highest. And I just noticed that they put a whole new bank of those self-service um, checkout um, machines in the market. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sad to see a whole new set of those machines." And and I thought about the workers, the workers who might lose their jobs because of automation. And I also thought about the loss of that person-to-person contact that I love at my local market. I love that I know people and I say hi to them. They've helped me. They've been so friendly, and I love that. And to see, this layer being peeled, being removed of that person to person contact makes me sad, right? I don't want to see that go. So I mentioned it to him, and he said, "Oh, he said at first, he said I was he has a family. He's a young man. He has a family, and he needs to work." And he said, "I just I just said, oh God, I understand this is how this is right now. This is it, how it is, and I know that all is well. That this brings different opportunities and a new way of being in the world." So he just went right to that place where he rejected the fear and worry and anxiety about maybe losing his job or having his hours cut. And he said that not, a couple of weeks later, sure enough, new opportunities started coming up within the market, and they got more hours uh, to supplement their income. And, so that fear and anxiety was dissipated before it really took hold, right, in him, because he turned to God and made that choice, that conscious choice to trust and know that he could change his thinking and change his mind. And he is not a religious science practitioner. He is, from a Christian faith, and that faith is that deep and present in him. His faith in God is that deep and present that he went directly to this decision to think differently. Now, the next paragraph quotes Paul. "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind," said Paul, as advice to people who had fallen into mental habits of fear and wrong desires. To them, he showed the need for new habits of thought. And today, we certainly must realize that we need a few new ones ourselves. Try letting the idea of divine love operate in your mind until it becomes a habitual thought. Start thinking love out in all directions, and particularly toward those areas which are at present negative and antagonistic. Love everything and everyone, no matter if at first you have to grit your teeth as you say the words and think the thoughts. Out of that new mental habit will emerge a different person, a finer person, and a more spiritual person. Choose love, use love, become love. So that is the end of this particular selection from by Raymond Charles Barker, 1940. And I think this is a powerful, powerful short article that demonstrates, our thought in action. And, I just, I love this. I love seeing how this has worked. This was 1940. that's that's a long time ago now. It's before I was born. And here it is, wonderfully, wonderfully presented by Raymond Charles Barker. And, the choice again, whatever we choose, I like choosing love. I like choosing peace. Those are things that I go to. Choosing, we have the choice to love anytime and love unconditionally. And sometimes there are those people that we are yet to love. That's the nature of life right now. I believe that we're here to perfect love. we're to perfect those kinds of God qualities that are inherent in us. And by choosing love, we can love unconditionally anyone that we meet, anyone that we hear about, anyone that crosses our paths, because everyone is multifaceted and they are at their core that divine essence, and they are lovable. So choose love, choose love, choose peace, choose abundance, choose those things that you want in your life. So that was by Raymond Charles Barker. And the wonderful thing about the archives is that you can find all kinds of things from the Science of Mind magazine. And it's not just Ernest Holmes' writings, right? It is writings of thinkers within the New Thought movement, Science of Mind, uh, over the many years that the magazine has existed. So we have this powerful, powerful tool in the archives. Now, the next piece that I wanted to go into is something that I thought was just incredibly applicable to today. Um, and I looked for who this person is. It's called The Supreme Challenge, and it's from 1958. And it is by Willett L. Hardin. And it is so, it's just right on for today. Everything that we're dealing with today, this is exactly what he's talking about. And again, we're going to peace. If peace is to be permanent in a world of economic justice and security, then the peoples of the world must know the truth and must act upon the truth. They must understand their relationship to one another and respond faithfully to the duties and responsibility which that relationship imposes. They must realize and act upon the sovereign fact that there is a moral and spiritual order in the universe to which humankind is intimately related. This spiritual order is the foundation on which alone society will progress and endure. Their practices must be in harmony with the supreme fact that there is a fundamental unity among people that transcends all differences of race, class, nation, and creed. This idea of an essential human brotherhood has come down through the ages from every society and every religion. The most important utterances in the Bible bearing on human relationship are these: Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, and whatsoever you would that men do to you, do you even so unto them. And this is in 1958. Of course, the civil rights movement was ongoing even, in the 50s. We have images from the 50s that, uh, were very disturbing. There were all kinds of things going on. There was violence against African American people, Black people. There were there was a lot of things that were preceding the what we know as the modern civil rights movement that kind of reached its nadir in the 60s. So this is talking to a time prior to that nadir. So I find this an amazing piece because it speaks directly without fear to our world. This is our world that we live in. And oftentimes, when in some religious science circles, we don't we shy away from circumstances. We say turn away from the circumstances, which of course is absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that we deny what is happening to certain people. And it doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to play a part in making sure that we are in harmony and that we are responding to our call, our divine call to be in relationship with one another. That's the other thing that I found so wonderful about this article. Oftentimes, the individual is highlighted in the way that the teachings are presented. And of course, individualization is something that happens with everyone in every society. It's something that is a part of human development, is that individualization. So we become individuals. And oftentimes, the thinking has been, well, primitive societies, whatever that might mean, didn't have individuals, they only had groups. But that is not true. All societies have allowed that individual expression to emerge because it was seen as absolutely necessary to the good of the whole. That whatever gifts a certain individual might have were absolutely necessary to not only the survival but the flourishing of the group. So those former ideas that a certain kind of Western thinking held on to were really not based in truth. So I find this so wonderful because that was kind of a prevalent thinking back then, right? In in the way that people did social sciences and the way that they categorized societies. That's how they would characterize them. So I found this incredibly important in an age when the individual was kind of put up there as the one and only, right? The one and only. And here, Willett L. Hardin is calling us to remember that we are in relationship. We are to live in brotherhood and sisterhood, peoplehood with everyone. And he goes on to say, brotherhood means extending to all people the same rights and privileges we claim for ourselves. It was a clarion call to every citizen in the nation to begin to lay the foundations for liberty, justice, security, and lasting peace, both at home and abroad. The spirit of brotherhood implies mutual trust, mutual respect, tolerance, and helpfulness, without which there can be no real democracy and no lasting peace. And look, here is a discussion of democracy in the Science of Mind magazine in 1958. And some people might call out, oh, that's politics. No, democracy is an idea. That's an idea of looking at people with the inherent right to choose, to participate in their governance the way that they govern themselves. It's an idea. And that's what we are talking about, those ideas that work for us, those high ideas that we can call divine in this sense. Yes, there's something that's very powerful about democracy, that participatory democracy that gives everyone an equal say in what is happening in shaping society. Have we attained that ideal? Well, Not yet. Not yet. It's a work in progress, but the idea is laid, right? And it's an idea that many people have agreed to work on, and we have agreed to work on that in this country. And if anyone would like to ask a question, that would be wonderful. I'm happy always to have comments and questions. You know, one of the words that stood out for me was security. Liberty, justice, security. So what does security mean? That means, you know, to be safe in your community, right? To be safe in your community. So that means that you can go about your business and not be turned away, not be treated as a second-class citizen, not to be feared, you know, all of those kinds of things. And we, you know, every era, every time frame that I've been living in for 7 decades, there have been people who have been marginalized, people who have been treated in a fashion that is unlike brotherhood and sisterhood and peoplehood. And yet here is a call for this in 1958. In 1958. And the other thing that I really, really think is so important is you know, what does that relationship require? That relationship requires mutual respect. And that's an interesting look at something. You know, what does that mean? You know, sometimes we see people getting into arguments and fights about being disrespected, right? And, you know, it gets somewhere that is that's kind of far from brotherhood, right? That it goes to the anger and the discord. And yet it is fundamental to creating these relationships to make sure that we have that mutual respect for one another. So respecting someone, going back to the love when someone is not respectful of us, or when you find that you have not been respectful to someone. Those are all calls for us to move into spirit and make a different choice. We can choose love at that point. Oh, I erred. I was disrespectful to this person. I erred. So what do? We forgive ourselves, and we also make amends, whatever they might look like, to that other person. And then we let go of it. That's the best, that's what we can do. And we change our behavior. Change our behavior because we're making a different choice, right? And that requires a behavior change. When we make a different choice, it requires a behavior change. And I'll go on to read this paragraph. I kind of went back to tolerance. You know, that used to be a word that would kind of set my teeth on edge, because it was usually directed at me as a person of color, right? Oh, we're going to tolerate you. And I was like, what? You're going to tolerate me? That doesn't sound good. I don't want to just be tolerated, right? So it used to bother me. But, you know, I kind of came to a different understanding of being tolerant. You know, we have all these different things about us, right? That just kind of set us on edge, right? It's kind of like being allergic to something or having a reaction to something, you know, brush up against, if you're allergic to grass, say you get a rash or whatever. Okay, that's what this is about. Uh, yeah, there's things that happen with in certain situations that I react to. How do I build up my tolerance to that so I'm not reactive? Well, that means that I go to these spiritual practices, right? And behaviors. Respecting people is one of them, right? Well, there's a difference here. That doesn't mean I have to break out in hives. That doesn't mean I have to go off the deep end. That means I make a different choice. I can choose to try to communicate with someone, try to bridge a gap between us. I can make a different choice. I can decide, well, it's not that important what was done or said in the scheme of things. So I can let that go, and if it happens again, then maybe I'll address it at that point. But it's not, we don't have to react so caustically to things. So I started to have a different idea of what tolerance means, because it can be in effect in a lot of ways, in ways that mean something to me. It's not directed at me. It's also how I show up and am in the world. So tolerance, trust. When we have mutual respect, it moves into trust. That follows when we're tolerant. When we're not reacting to someone, then we can move into trust. We really can. It is absolutely, a part of the equation, in fact, that when we have those things, that we can move into trust. And trust is a wonderful, wonderful thing because it leads to intimacy and true relationship with others. When we're fearful of other people, when we're defensive, heavily defended and guarded, we can't really have a true relationship with others. And he goes on to say, true brotherhood requires definite moral and ethical laws in human relations. Like the physical laws of nature, these laws derive their authority from beyond ourselves and are immutable only in the realization that it is righteousness that exalteth a nation, and that we are all brothers and sisters of one another. Is it possible for individuals and nations of different traditions, loyalty, and interests to work together in unselfish cooperation for the common good of the whole planet? And look, in 1958, he is talking about the entire planet. It's not this move to nationalism and isolationism. He is speaking of the whole planet and our responsibility to one another globally, not just in our little neighborhood, not just in our family, but globally. So this is large thinking, right? It's not myopic. It is moving into the wholeness and integrity that our teachings invite us to participate in. In assuming the duties and responsibilities that the practice of true brotherhood requires, one need not relinquish one's individuality or personal development. Again, truth, that's a truth for any healthy societies. The societies that have worked, have flourished, and have seeded subsequent societies all have this at their base. As is often said, we never really know our own individual powers and capacities or realize our highest development until we have entered sympathetically into partnership with others. Awesome. right? That is awesome, awesome truth that is spoken here. We are entering sympathetically into partnership with others. And, I don't want to, kind of parse every single word, but I want us to see sympathy more as empathy here, that we're not pitying someone. No, we recognize our common humanity. That's being sympathetic with someone also. It's not pity, it's recognizing our common humanity. That what you are experiencing in this moment, wherever you may be on this globe, I may have experienced myself in a different circumstance, but the same feelings and the same sorts of outflow for me have occurred as a human being. We are all human beings, right? So that's what he continues to tell us. We serve ourselves best when we serve others. And that's a truth. In serving others, we serve ourselves best, and we become, we just become more, right? We become more when we're giving, uh, and there's nothing like it, right? Serving wherever you might decide that you put your talents in service to humanity. Selfishness and the spirit of isolation shrink personalities and cause them to become static, weak, and impotent. Great souls of the past have never locked themselves in a secluded place. By their own choice, they have joined with their fellow human beings to help overcome the often perplexing problems and challenges of life. So here is a New Thought person challenging us to not just focus on the inward, but to know that as important as the inward is, it's equally important to join with our fellow human beings to work toward solving the challenges of our times. And how important is that in this present moment? So important, so important. The present supreme challenge is to restore and preserve the moral ethic and ethical practices which have been displaced by class conflict, racial prejudice, national isolation, international anarchy, human exploitation, monopoly of natural resources, and other forms of injustice. A determined people can, by its own practices, open the way for the establishment of universal justice, the elevation of the masses, the preservation of the dignity and worth of the individual, and the maintenance of peace among the nations of the world. Moral neutrality and a negative golden rule will not suffice. Such attitudes of indifference will only blight our existence together here on earth. To live and let live is not enough. People everywhere must see to it that their lives are undergirded by a spirit of helpfulness. The great religions of the world and the great leaders of the past have emphasized that genuine human brotherhood imposes, or should impose, a spirit of love for all people. What is the nature of this love? What does it mean to love your fellow human beings? It means a realization of human kinship based upon the common origin and the common destiny of humanity. It means recognition of our essential divinity, a realization that in every life's pilgrimage, there are holy places where one is made to feel their kinship with the divine. Long ago, William Ellery Channing said that all human beings would have within their breast an element of that everlasting law, which the highest orders of creation obey. He emphasized that every human being sees, however dimly, the great object of divine and creative intelligence, and is capable of ever larger perceptions of truth, that we all have convictions which can purify and expand into a sublime life. And I want to emphasize a couple of things here. And, of course, the first one is love, right? A spirit of love for all people, not just Americans, not just your family, not just your ethnic group, not just your club group or, your religious group, all people, all people. This is expansive. That contraction that moves to a static place where there's no growth. If we're to grow, we have to be in relationship with one another. And what is this nature of this love? It is to understand, to realize, really realize in the deepest recesses of us that we are kin. We are kin. Yes, we have difference. Yes, there are certain things that different groups do that make them who they are. But we are all kin. They're all facets of the same wondrous gem that humanity is. So everyone, thank you so much for being here with us. And, I'm always encouraging us to chime in if you have a question. It's always fun to talk with you. So have a wonderful, wonderful week. And think on these things: love, kinship, our inherent human family where love prevails. See you next time.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.